edition of Real Talk with Decatur Heights Baptist Church. 2020 has been such a crazy year. Between the wildfires, racial injustices, and our crazy political climate, 2020 has definitely been one for the history books. Nothing has affected us more than our global pandemic with coronavirus. Who would have thought a year later we would still be suffering through this? Many of us have lost jobs, lost loved ones, and some days it's even hard for us to even get out of the bed. Through all of this, many of us still have to be parents. We have become teachers, coaches, tutors, and sometimes even referees. How do you deal with that? Today we will hear from a few parents to see how they deal with that. Join us in today's edition of Real Talk, Parenting Through a Pandemic.
Thank you guys so much for joining us today for Parenting in the Pandemic. We have a special guest with us, and her name is Charlotte Avery. So we are going to jump right into this. Charlotte, can you tell us a little about yourself and your family?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm so excited that we get to have this time together because, we haven't been able to be in a space together and all that, and so I'm just happy that we're doing this. So anyway, my name is Charlotte Avery, and I am known as the family strategist for the PhD in motherhood. I'm wife of one, mom of 7, and the owner of No Pets. I was actually voted Virginia Mother of the Year for 2020 last year, and I was very excited about that. I'm an author, I am a strategist and coach and a consultant, and I am all things marriage, motherhood, ministry, and all of that.
Great. And today we are talking to James Felton, the Minister of Music at Decatur Heights Baptist Church. So, James, do us the best favor ever and introduce yourself. Tell us a little about yourself and your family, your children even.
All right. Again, my name is James Felton. I am the Minister of Music here at Decatur Heights Baptist Church. My family consists of my wife, Tessalyn, and my 3 boys, Taylor, Joshua, and Carter. That's pretty much, those are my boys, that's my family. I love them dearly. And they love me too.
That's good stuff. I don't know many kids who don't love their parents, but I'm sure we'll figure it out. And we are interviewing Veronica Anderson, affectionately known as Nikki, with 3 wonderful kids. So, Nikki, tell us a little about yourself. Tell us a little about your family.
Okay, so I've been a part of this church for so many years, I've lost count. My husband is one of the deacons, and we've kind of just been a big part of the workforce of this church, and we are blessed to do so, and it's we give all glory, honor, and praise to God. I am currently a 3rd grade reading and social studies teacher, where at the school that my kids actually go at, so that's really cool. And you said tell about my kids?
A little about your family.
A little about my family. Okay, so I do have the 3 children, 2 boys, 1 girl. Our daughter is the oldest, and they are a ball. All of them are a giant ball of energy when they're together, and 3 massive ones when they are apart. Our house is the loud house, and it's just crazy chaotic, but the kids do know they're loved. They know that we are raising them in a way that they'll be well behaved when they're supposed to be, but feel really comfortable at home, just feel crazy and loose at home. So we are a very loving family, but very discipline heavy as well.
So you said mother to 7.
Yes.
How have you been handling this pandemic? Tell us, how do you balance counseling, teaching, strategies, ministry, homeschooling? How do you balance? Tell me.
So, when people ask me how do I balance things and how do I keep it together, I always tell people I don't balance, I blend.
Okay. Explain.
So I look at blending, when you're balancing, it's like you're trying to have equal time for everything. And you're like this, for everything to be in balance, everything has to be equal. But you know what, that's not really realistic in life, especially not in my life, being a wife and a mom and, doing virtual schooling and still working inside my home and all of that. But, my life is like a teeter-totter. It's kind of like this. And so in order to keep my sanity, I say that I don't balance my life, I blend my life. because I kind of look at my life as an amazing smoothie.
Gotcha.
Right? And you know how you make a smoothie and you have like, today you might decide to have blueberries. You might decide to have strawberries and bananas, and like say it's like 5 ingredients. Well, today my smoothie may have like more blueberries than strawberries, but that doesn't make my smoothie bad.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make my blend bad.
No,
it just
does
means
not.
that today I'm prioritizing the blueberries. And so for me, that's what blending is like. It's not, saying that I'm balancing and I'm checking everything off on a to-do list. It's really blending is more about prioritizing.
Gotcha. So how have you prioritized your kids in this pandemic? So I know we're all homeschooling.
Mm-hmm.
How has that been?
So actually, we're not actually homeschooling, we're virtual schooling. Because, when you're homeschooling, and I was a former homeschooler.
Okay.
Which also made it easy for me to jump into virtual schooling because I had already homeschooled.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're homeschooling, you actually have more leeway than virtual schooling, because virtual schooling, you're still going by what your school system says, whatever the school system is. My kids are in Fairfax County, so, whatever Fairfax County is dictating as far as virtual schooling and everything, that's what we have to do. But when you're homeschooling, you get to kind of fly by the seat of your pants and do school your way. But with virtual schooling, all of my kids, oh my gosh, it has been a major undertaking, and it's been a major adventure to say the least. I mean, because I have 7 kids,
Right.
and so, my youngest is in 2nd grade, and my oldest is a junior in high school. So, having that much, so the breakdown of my kids in school, I have 3 in elementary school, 2 in middle school, and 2 in high school.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
And so my one of my kids who just went from elementary school to middle school, she's the one that I've really had to kind of stay on top of, because it was hard going from elementary school to middle school. It's a different beast. But even, when elementary school, as it was ending, we were still in the pandemic. But now you're talking about having 7 classes a day and things of that nature. So for her, I think it's been like the most transition. But for my other kids, it hasn't been as hard. And the other thing too is that my kids are very much independent workers. And so that's made it easier.
So tell me some.
Yeah.
Since the start of the pandemic, you guys have had to become teachers, counselors, referees, because you have 3 boys.
Oh yes.
How have you managed to balance it all?
Since the pandemic and the kids had to do their schooling online, I think one of the biggest challenges we had was them trying to stay focused on the online content versus going to YouTube. So that was the first thing, the boys, we got Josh wanting to be a YouTuber, that's his thing. Taylor into anime. Carter's just Carter, so he's a newborn, he's just all over the place. But it's been kind of difficult, I would say, because working full time and coming home to try to help or assist with the homework piece, things like that. Sometimes from the day's work, sometimes we're not in the right headspace to help the kids sometimes. So it's been a bit of a challenge, but with some perseverance, we're able to kind of help them and get through it the best way we can as working parents.
Okay, that's great. Have you realized that any of your kids have fallen behind? Have their grades suffered some?
I would say yes, definitely. My 2 oldest, yes, definitely. Some of the grades got behind. I think they got too complacent because it's too easy just to get away from the content like Google Classroom and go to YouTube. And then you got Joshua and me try to make an excuse for why he's on YouTube. I'm using the calculator. Like, no, you're not. You're not on YouTube using a calculator and things like that. So their focus is, I would say that Taylor, he has the most focus, but he's definitely prideful. He don't like to ask for help. Joshua, on the other hand, he'll just try to make up any type of excuse to be on the internet or try to chat with friends through Google Classroom. And it's been kind of hard for both of them to stay on task, and their grades have been reflective in that.
So you said you're a teacher,
Yes, ma'am.
which means you are not only a teacher, but a counselor and a mom in the process, and possibly a few more hats. How have you balanced all these titles whilst doing virtual schooling?
I can't say that I balance things on my own. My husband, especially at the beginning of schooling for this particular school year, was a massive help. He still works a full-time job, but he goes to work late every day, so that way, especially at the beginning, he's able to fully support the kids. They have their own workstation that's separate from where I work, so that way our voices, the teacher's voices, my voice, aren't interacting with each other and kind of messing everything up. So that definitely has helped because of that routine that my husband started. It's kind of made it so the children, our two oldest that are in school, are more independent. And that has helped massively because other than a couple tech issues, they're pretty much good to go. Okay. And they understand the value of education and how serious we are about getting the best grades, getting the best grades overall. We tell them you have to be the best in your class, do your best so that you can be the best, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And they're only in second to first grade, so we're trying to start them young on that idea of being very, very serious about your education. With the little one, that balance is still we're still figuring that out, even if it's late in the game, because he's 3 and he's just big into dinosaurs, so that's his thing and that's his form of education. Thankfully, there's a lot of videos that use dinosaurs in an educational manner. But yeah, it's a learning thing every day. I am a referee because the little one wants to be like the big ones, and especially big brother who wants to fight all the time. Uh-huh. So it's literal refereeing, picking up, moving, disciplining, and I've yet to find a perfect balance. I don't think we ever will. But it's kind of just a day-to-day thing and looking past this point to realize that my actions, my husband and our actions, it affects the way that the kids are molded into the future. So we're also very future-minded parents. We don't want our kids to behave, or the behaviors that they show now will obviously keep going into the future. Right. So if you don't nip it in the bud now, mm-hmm. certain behaviors that are not desirable will continue on and make less than satisfactory adults, I guess.
Right. With the rollout of the vaccine, mm-hmm. are you comfortable sending your kids back to school? What is your take on the entire situation?
That's a really good question. So honestly, today, mm-hmm. right now, as we're talking, my point of view on the vaccine and my kids going back to school is, 1, they're not getting it, and 2, they're not going back to school. And if it just so happens that they make a mandate mm-hmm. to say that unless your children are vaccinated, they can't go back to school, then I'll just be homeschooling 7 kids.
Okay.
And I'm okay with that mm-hmm. because, when I think that, as parents, we have to be researchers. We have to do what's best for our families. So while, my neighbor across the street might decide they're going to do the vaccine or whatever, I will not fault them, or point fingers at them, mm-hmm. Because they did. Just like I don't expect anybody to point the finger and make, judgments toward me because I haven't. Because the reality of it is when I look at all the research that people really are not aware of, I'm like, okay, well, they skipped animal trials.
Right.
And now they're doing human, so now we as humans are becoming the guinea pigs. And now, we're having all of these, the backlash. We're seeing, people who are getting sick from it or what have you. And so I'm just like, no, we're not doing that right now. And so I just choose for myself and my family, I choose for us not to be first round guinea pigs for this vaccine.
Okay. Do you think it would have been better served for them to get the current vaccine and just go back into the school system?
That's another thing as well. Though the pandemic has created an environment where the kids are home all the time, and it had definitely changed the way we buy groceries, changed the way me and Tessin and maybe 1 or 2 spend time with each other, things like that. I would say that we're very iffy. We're not sure yet. On the vaccine, I believe that they should get it. Mm-hmm. But as far as going back to school, where the particular school they had cases of the staff mm-hmm. contracting COVID, we're like, me and Tess is like, we're not sure right. yet. But we're more than likely that may be a difficult bridge to cross because I don't mind getting the vaccine, but maybe me and Tess have to talk about maybe the kids to see, because there's a lot of background, a lot of maybe not say conspiracy theories mm-hmm. against vaccines, but there's a lot of pause for right now.
And if they mandate it, what do you do?
Yeah, if they mandate it, then that would definitely be a difficult scenario. I would suggest that maybe the school would give the parents the option whether we can either have the child do school instruction for the rest of the year or stay online. We'll more than likely stick with the online platform just in case. We recently got an email saying that they may start a 2-day in school and the rest of the week at home. I don't know if we will entertain that at the moment, but we'll see.
Okay, I'm have a 6-year-old, so my thing is I'm not ready. I'm truly not ready. There's absolutely no reason for me to think that he's not going to come home with something. He's 6. But your son is 16, 17?
14.
14, there we go.
10, yeah.
Right, so do you think he would be better able to manage the sanitization, all of that?
Oh yeah, I think they both kind of both Taylor and Joshua's kind of good in hand sanitizing, trying to keep their hands clean, their face clean, things like that. They Taylor's more so like he's like me. Taylor is older beyond his age, like so he's just like me. If I gotta get it, I'm gonna get it. You know, if I got to, whatever. It's not gonna change. It's not gonna change or affect my life in any particular way. Joshua. He would probably be just fine with it as well, getting the shot as well. But he, kids his age, they probably don't. No kid loves needles. I don't care what anybody say. But that's definitely, I guess, what would be beneficial is for me and Tessa to make sure we come to agreement to see, because I may want necessarily want the boys to get vaccinated. She may not want the boys to get vaccinated. So that also may cause a little strife, a little rift, but nothing that can't be worked out.
So you said you have not yet found the perfect balance. How have you handled socialization during this pandemic? We know kids love to be with other kids. We know how have you handled that? How have you restricted who it is that they socialize with? How have you vetted who you allow in your house? How have you managed?
So official, no. Church people have been a big social factor. Church family, rather. The kids in this church, our kids are related to, but has helped tremendously because I don't think they would be able to make it through well enough or as stable enough as they have been able to without your son, without the pastor's kids, and my sister-in-law's daughter as well, and those are the only ones that are kind of, and also my side of the family has also been able to come back in, as they were very apprehensive at first, but without the extremely close people that we have to see every week, so the germs are always shared, it's definitely helped a lot, because I can't provide the same fun and same energy that a child can, even though I'm mommy. I can't. That's not my job anyhow. And I have to do my own stuff too.
Right.
So just having actual other children that I know are safe, that I know their parents are trying their best to keep them safe, have definitely helped. But their school friends are not allowed to come over. School friends, actually my son's not really showing interest in wanting to see his old friends. My daughter, poor thing, has been wanting to see her old best friends and stuff like that. So hopefully after all this and after everyone's deemed safe, then we can start play dates and just coming over again, because I know they miss it.
Okay, so we know the pandemic has affected many families, and not just the children per se, but the head of the family, your husband and yourself. Do you think you've been emotionally or even mentally affected by this pandemic?
Oh, absolutely. I don't know how anybody could not be emotionally impacted. And even physically impacted. And when I say emotionally, I think whether people know it or not, I think that we're all living in some form of depression right now.
Okay.
Because, we have been created to be, communal people, unless you're like a total introvert, which I am totally not. So, when I'm being an extrovert, this is really hard for me.
Right.
This is hard for Charlotte. I'm just letting you know, this is hard for your girl. Because, I'm ready to be out. I'm ready to be with my friends. I give energy to people. I get energy from people. And I miss that. And, I have some kids who are extroverts who are just like, I wish I could just be back at school. I wish I could do this. I wish I could do that. And then my other kids, I have some other kids like, I'm glad to be at home, you know, ever. But for me, I'm like, you know what? I love my husband with my life. I love my children with my life. I love myself with my life. And because I love myself with my life, I want to love them too. And if I don't do what's best for me, you know, and I'm not taking care of my own self-care and things like that, then I'm not going to be my best self for them. Yes. And, you know, I saw myself, you know, not early on, but like kind of getting to the middle. And I was like, I feel like I'm about to lose my mind. But I realized it was because I had not really, I was making sure that everything was good with the kids. I was making sure everything was good with my husband. And I was not doing some of the things that were bringing me joy. And I think that when we, as parents, as women, as spouses, you know, when we can go back and find our place of joy, then I think it makes it easier for us to parent in the pandemic. You know, you follow me on social media, and so, you know, in June, when school was out and everything, and of course we were in the pandemic, I was like, you know what, we're going to have a family fun fair. And I mean, we played games, we had relays outside, I made funnel cake, but every day, I mean, every Friday is funnel cake Friday in our house. Okay. And so, you know, I made candy apples, and we literally set up our front yard like a family, it looked like a fair, and people were walking by and they were like, are you guys having a party? And we weren't, but we were just having, you know, a family fun fair so that we could be outside in the sunshine and play and laugh and run. And things like that are necessary. You know, it's necessary, you know, even for my kids to, you know, for them to say, you know what, Mom, I need to spend time with my friends. And that's hard. It's hard for them, you know, to be able to say, you know, it's not hard for them to say it, you know, that they want to spend time with their friends, but because of the pandemic, it's hard for them to do it. And so, you know, I'm always trying to find ways not only for myself to socialize, being the extrovert that I am, but for them to be able to socialize. So let me tell you one thing that we did. We told our kids, because in the beginning we were like, nobody's hanging out with anybody. Right. You know, God blessed y'all to be gifted to each other. Hallelujah. So, y'all have, yes, all of y'all are friends. So, but what we did is we found one friend that each of them had. And we said to them, this is your one friend. We knew how, we talked to their parents. Right. We knew how they were social distancing and things like that. And we said, okay, that is your one friend who you are allowed to leave our home and go to their house. Right. And they're allowed to leave their home and come to their house because their parents were very aware of what we were doing and how we were social distancing and things of that nature. And so they each have one friend who they can be out of the house and go and spend time with. Okay. But they also get to, you know, do FaceTime and things like that. And, you know, I'm totally like, unless it's my own social media for work, I'm totally against my kids having all this screen time. Right. It's just not good for them, number one. But, like, you know, my son, my youngest son, he's like, well, can I FaceTime with so-and-so? I was like, you're 9. Like, you don't need to FaceTime with anybody, you know? And then I thought about it, and I'm like, well, you don't get to see your friend at school. So now he gets to go on Zoom and talk to his friend. You know, aren't we all Zooming? You know, so I'm like, oh my gosh, like my kids are actually doing Zoom and all this stuff, you know, but these are some things that we put in place so that they can still feel like, you know what, I get to have time with my friends. I get to leave my house every now and then.
You've mentioned strife, and I don't have the statistics. I'll be real clear about that, but we have seen an increase in dissolution of marriages. Do you think the pandemic and the time and the proximity of the husband and wife being so close, do you think it is a factor?
I think it definitely it aids into the, you know, being around everybody together for extended period of times versus when the pandemic wasn't here. At least you had the kids for a block of the day away, block of this time away. But now since they're home 24/7, you know, and as we have the newborn, we got Carter growing up, and you know he's getting touchy-feely, he's running around, he's stealing things, he's beating me in my face, all that good stuff that kids do. It does kind of hinder that communication. It does kind of hinder that time with you know, testing and you know us being together at the time, because on top of that, unbeknownst to a lot of people, that we're the only ones here. We have no family here in DC. All of our family's in Florida, so we too far away. We live too far away from, like, let's say her mother to come up and watch the kids, you know, so me and Chester can get out and just spend some quality time with each other. But if it wasn't Florida, this would be a totally different story. Probably there's a lot more cases. We probably would have caught it in Florida, to be honest with you. But thanks be to God that that's not the case. Either the times we visited or since we've been here. But it is difficult when you don't have that family support to kind of like help with the kids, you know, especially that grandma support, you know, things like that. So, but with me and Tess, we are finding ways. We still have to find a way to spend that quality time, whether it is late at night, 11 o'clock, midnight. Hey, all the kids sleep, here we go. And we can spend some quality time, watch comedy, something like that.
So how then do you have your children spend quality time with, let's say, for instance, their friends? For we know socialization is important, but we also know that we've been asked to social distance and also just stay away, basically. Right. How have your kids been socializing? So,
particularly in our neighborhood, there's not many kids on our particular street, but our neighbor, he has a child about the age of Joshua, so they kind of friends, a Hispanic neighbor, and right, I guess at the height of the pandemic, or when they started saying wear masks and things like that, we still allowed them to play in the front yard and stuff like that. It wasn't like they had to be 6 feet away to play. We just kind of try to make it feel as normal as possible, even though they're wearing masks. But of course, when it's hot outside, the mask can start sweating when it's summer. So, you know, Joshua would have issues with, I can't breathe. I gotta take this mask off. I can't breathe. We're like, you're all right. You're just sweating. You're oversaturated.
Right.
You're good. But I understand. If it was a water slide, try going through a water slide, you know, and slipping slides with a mask on, you know, you can't. So at sometimes we had to kind of like take the mask off, like, look, just play, just have fun. And by the grace of God, no one contracted or had, in most cases, I think you don't really hear much in the news about kids dying from it. I'm not sure about contracting it. I think I heard maybe 2 or 3 cases where someone has died and they were teenagers from the pandemic itself. But we try to normalize, keep it normal for them the best way we can, given the pandemic. With that being said, it's not like we let them spend the night or anything like they used to, or sit in the close quarters and things like that. They playing outside, they active, and they just going from place to place, maybe for about an hour at a time.
Got you.
Yeah.
So has this pandemic affected any of your children emotionally?
I would probably say, yeah. I think, let's say Joshua in particular, because learning online is something totally different. Well, both of them, because they learn in class before the pandemic, so learning online, I guess the emotions would be, oh wow, I don't have that person to, hey, can you help me out to tap to, or that paraprofessional to tap into in person. Now it either has to be an email or be a Google chat if they're available. So they're used to having that accessibility to get the help that they need right there on the spot, versus now it's delayed or it's non-existent in some cases. So I say emotionally for Joshua, yeah, because he's just struggling with just trying to stay on task, trying to stay, committed to the work, because he's just going everywhere else.
Right.
So the school definitely, intervened to make sure they try to limit the access to certain sites. Taylor in particular, Taylor stays to himself. Taylor really just to himself. Like he's like a bear in his room. Like during the pandemic, he's mostly in his room all the time. He might wake up maybe noon. Sometimes Taylor, like we forget that Taylor's there. Taylor, you all right? You up there? Yeah, I'm good. But we try to get him out of the house as much as we can. But emotionally, I think for both of them, and it has been difficult because all of their instruction is on work. All of their instructional work is online, and they're not used to that. They're only used to the tangible paper, doing the work the traditional way.
Have your kids reflected any emotional imbalance relating directly, of course, to the pandemic. Have they any of that?
I think we try to keep it as kid-friendly as possible. At the beginning, we weren't really talking much. Then we just can't see certain people. We can't go to the playgrounds anymore because people aren't acting right, and trying to make it as less scary as possible. With time, as my father is very, very high risk, they weren't able to see my parents for quite some time. And then all of a sudden, my mom was like, well, I just bring them over one day because you just reach a limit. And I think they're getting tired of each other.
Right.
They're definitely, the big ones are definitely tired of the 3-year-old, and they would like to be able probably to see kids their own age. Alyssa probably wants to see more girls, as it's very boy heavy. But I think they're coping as best as possible under the circumstances and given the situation that we're blessed with, because they do have children they can spend time with.
You are blessed with a very strategic situation. How then would you say the pandemic has affected your faith? How would you say it has affected your family's faith?
I think it's helped it. And I know that sounds crazy, but my husband and I, we sit back when we have our own time together and we're like, man, how God has blessed us. When you put everything in perspective. My father has been in the hospital multiple times, hasn't contracted it. He goes to a weekly, multiple times during the week appointment and hasn't gotten it, but people have. He's a blessed man. He shouldn't be here, and we just see that. My mother works, she's a registered nurse. The hospital is to capacity, and she got permission to not work in the COVID areas.
Right.
The church has grown, and the church is pretty much our life right now, and probably always will be. But the place that we were at a year ago, we know this church would not have survived without this pandemic actually, because the social media, the online presence had to happen in order for us to keep going, especially at the moment that we had to kind of just stop everything.
Right.
Without YouTube, without the other platforms, this church would not be in the position that it's in. Yeah, so it's kind of amazing.
Let me understand what you're truly saying. You are grateful for the pandemic.
I'm grateful for the way it's allowed me to see things, because I'm not grateful for the fact people that have had to pass away without unwisely have to pass away too, with just people not planning correctly, leading correctly. I'm grateful for strategic minds, I guess. I'm grateful for God leading and God providing in a way that we literally would have never been able to see. Our pastor's vision can work despite or in spite of the fact that people can't fill this church legally. We're not allowed to have but so many people here. Every pew cannot be filled, nor would we want it to be filled under these circumstances. But when it's done, please come. But please. But it allows me to, my faith is allowed to be strengthened because I can see how God chooses to work. And in spite of any situation, as crazy, chaotic, as messy as the situation has been and is continuing to be, He's still working, and He doesn't have to. He's still choosing to bless us with people with vision, with like-mindedness, with friendship, with relationships that we literally wouldn't have never had. My kids have new friends because of this time, because of this church, that we would not be spending time together the way that we would have been had it been normal. We're forced to be stuck together, and that's a beautiful thing that's growing.
Would you then say that God is your source?
I would say He's the rock. My husband and I, our entire relationship from the time we started dating has been based off our values in God. Without Him and us making Him the center of everything we do, none of this would happen, because our story together as a couple does not make sense.
Right.
Without God providing, without the leadership of my husband and his vision, none of this to this day would have never happened. Without God using my husband in the way He did for the leadership of the church, pastor wouldn't be here. And that's not to toot anyone's horn, but it's just like puzzle pieces that you didn't know were supposed to fit, and at the last second they get there. And it's just, the pandemic has shown me amazement in the way that God has worked and continues to work.
How has the pandemic tested your faith, tested your husband's faith, tested the faith of your children?
such a good question. During this pandemic, like, we have really had to, if we never knew that God was our source, let me just say that. If we never knew that God was our source, we know it now. Like, I always tell people, God's record is good with our family. I mean, he has done so much for us even before this pandemic. But I'm telling you, knowing that in the early part of the pandemic, when my husband wasn't working, for 3 months or what have you, because, everything was shutting down and all of that. I mean, knowing that, we had to really trust and believe that God really was going to supply all of our needs according to his riches and glory. And God is a promise keeper. He has done that. He has really, really done that. I mean, for our children, I think, because they live through us, so I think, for them, it was kind of like, it's been, they were very active, and participating in activities and doing karate and doing gymnastics and playing basketball and doing all these things and doing dance. I mean, our life was literally like at home, in the car, at home, in the car, and now, it's kind of like, okay, well, if I'm not able to, like, even for my son, if he's not able to play basketball right now, what does that mean? What is that going to mean with him being a junior in high school and things like that? And so we've had to find other avenues, but we've also had to remind him what God has for you is for you. And so if God,
he has dreams of becoming a basketball player.
Yes, he does. I mean, he plays basketball. He was just at basketball this morning, and he trains really, really hard, but knowing that, I mean, they're still playing basketball in high school, but he's not. But he is playing with a different team. And so, just to see how that's impacted him, but the fact that they have to really, we've had to have conversations with our children, and I think all parents, have to have these conversations with their kids at some point, that it's not about you. I mean, especially when, as parents, we're the ones who are the money makers. We're the ones that are paying for their activities. We're the ones that are putting food on their table. We're the ones, doing all of these different things for them, so they don't really realize what my husband, like, they see my husband go to work, and things of that nature. But when my husband when we had to sit down with all of them and say, there's no dance, there's no basketball, there's no this, there's no that. And they're like, well, why? Why can't we do this? Why can't we do that, or whatever? And we're like, because Daddy's not working right now. And because we have to make different choices and we have to prioritize other things. And your extracurricular activities, the key word in that is extra. So therefore, everything that's extra, if it's not a need, then we can't do that right now. We can still do some of the things that we want, but we can't do everything that we want to do. And then we had to tell them, this is the difference between a need and a want. It's our job as parents to, to teach them these things. It's our jobs as parents to teach them not to be entitled people. And so they've really had to, we hear them praying more. We hear their heart's desires that they're telling God, even when they're praying for their friends and their grandparents and godparents and things like that, we hear the sincerity of their prayers. And so, but the thing is too, is that although God has, our faith has been tested, even them as young people, they've been able to see the miraculous hand of God in the midst of it, and it's just really, it's really a blessing. And to be able to hear my children say, Mom, it's really a blessing that we can, do this. It's really a blessing that you provide that you go out of your way to provide opportunities for us, that you think about us, to have fun and to do things, Christmas was a huge thing around here for us. I mean, I started decorating in October, and and so, we had all these Christmas decorations up even before December got here. But, to be able to provide an environment of love and joy and peace and comfort for them was really major for me. That's and great. So I really, really, really wanted to do that. And I always want to do that. But, my son, Israel, he said to me, he said, Mom, you're really going all out. for these holidays and things like that. I said, yeah, I think it's important. He's like, oh, I love you. I'm not complaining. I love it.
I want to know, how has the pandemic tested the faith of your household? How has the pandemic tested your faith?
Well, it definitely tested my faith with not knowing whether I was an essential employee or not. From working in the bank, I look back at this and I'm like, thanks be to God that I'm essential. I guess banking employees are essential. And because there was a time in DC that I had to get papers. I had to get a paper from my manager, and if I was to get pulled over, I had to show proof that I'm an essential employee going to work. I guess when they had that particular lockdown in the beginning. I tell you what, if I wasn't essential, or if I didn't, started working with the bank a year prior before the pandemic started, I mean, just the timing, just look at the timing, it's just God's timing is perfect. And it was easy to complain plenty of times, but I'm like, you know what, thanks God I have a job, bills are paid, given the pandemic, and yes, I'm exposing myself, being on the front lines, thank God behind the teleglass at work, being exposed the whole entire time and not catching COVID. So as far as my faith and the faith in the household, it's been solid. It's been very motivational and solid. Now in some cases, let's say if it was pursuing other career opportunities or seeking full-time employments here and there, I think for Tess, for her business, it's been difficult because no one can meet in person because she does therapy, so now she does it mostly online, where it was before the pandemic, it was like 50-50.
Right.
So that's been kind of difficult, but definitely well maintained. Her clients understood, so they do it all online, and actually works better for a lot of people involved. But all in all, the faith in the household has been strong. Has it been difficult? Yes, but it's been strong because it could have been worse. When I drive around and I consider that there's the homeless still there, there's people that lost their jobs that wasn't considered essential, or people that's been furloughed and things of that nature. Is thanks be to God that wasn't the case for us, I would say.
That's good.
Yeah.
So then you could very well say God is your source.
Absolutely. God has been our source since we moved up here to DC. I mean, we moved here from family support to coming out here on our own. And it's by the grace of God that we're still here. I don't take any credit for anything of any reason why we're here and why He sustained us here. I mean, there's plenty of times been close calls, very close calls, like should we move back to Florida, things like that, but it never happened. It just never happened. So when you start planning, make sure you write it in pencil because God may want to erase it.
Stop for a second.
Yeah.
I want you to look into the camera for me.
Okay.
And tell the people what you just said.
All right.
When you're planning, what are you supposed to do?
When you are planning, when you are making your plans, make sure you write it in pencil because God may want to erase it.
That's a great point. A great point. So, as the minister of music, what song would you say got you through this period?
Oh man.
We know there's going to be a whole slew of songs.
I know so much music.
But what song is your go-to song for this entire time?
I would say
and don't bother to tell me Never Would Have Made It.
no. I mean, good song. Kudos to Mom Sam. But I would say Jesus at the Center of It All, Israel, from his album. I think it was live in I think in Houston or something like that. But Jesus at the Center of It All.
Okay.
That'll be a song that definitely got me through this year, every year. It don't matter pandemic or not.
I am happy you believe God is your rock, because in Him being your rock, you are then able to say to other parents, other family members, other people in general, this is my advice to you for parenting in the pandemic. What would you tell them?
That you are not alone in this, and that there is someone who sees everything about the situation, all the nitty-gritty, all the pieces, and has it laid out in a way that we literally can never fathom. And despite the loss that our families might have had, our friends might have had, we ourselves might have had, there's such a bigger picture, but we still are a vital role in it. And to not lose the faith and not lose your mind in the crazy, and to just keep going. find somehow, some way to rely on him. Keep your faith as strong as possible, because this isn't it. And I think that truly has been the motive. We're going to get out of this. I don't know when. That's not obviously not my call. I would have called it a minute ago. But I think that's the most reassuring thing. And I think with Christianity, at least my own, that God's got it. And as I've grown up and as I've had children, and I thought the world was ending 15 times over. And in this case, for some people, it really truly does feel like that. But in the end, God's got it throughout it all. In the end, in the beginning, in the future, all of it is laid out in a way that we literally will have no idea how it's going to work out, but it will work out for the good of God and to help benefit his believers. And I think that in itself is an amazing thing.
So you say God's got it.
God's got it, y'all.
So as a chief strategist, as all the lovely titles you gave me in the beginning, which the truth is I don't remember, what are the 3 core pieces of advice you would give to anybody right now who's parenting, single parents, fathers, mothers, married couples, anybody who's parenting in the middle of this pandemic? What are 3 sound pieces of advice you would give them?
I think I would give them the same ones that I just gave. Really, take time to take care of yourself. Take care of yourself, because if you don't take care of you, you can't take care of anybody else. You can't. If, people, they have this thing, what, happy wife, happy life? But it's really not. It's happy spouse, happy house. But if you don't have a spouse, it's still happy me and happy everybody else that I have to be with. You know what I'm saying? Because if your kids are miserable, then they're going to make you miserable. So you've got to find your joy. Find what makes you happy. Work that thing. Find your joy in the midst of all this. Maximize your time together. Because you know what? My kids, I have 7 to 17. 7 to 17. And your kids are true from the time that they're born. They're an example that time does not stop for anything.
Right.
And I don't know in our lifetime if we're ever going to be able to have this amount of time to be able to sow really great, amazing seeds into our kids.
So time stops for nothing, and you proved that to us in the middle of the pandemic last year. Because in the middle of the pandemic, you were able to release. And I was like, how did she write this, manage virtual schooling? How did you even? So tell us the process, because we do have authors who are watching.
Yes.
Who's stuck, not yet written probably the 3rd page of their book, even though they have a deal. So what should they do? You did this in the middle of the pandemic. Give the authors some. So
I wrote this book, Afro Izzy, and I literally released it in the middle of the pandemic over the summer. And when I wrote this book, I actually, because people always say, well, Charlotte, how do you have like a husband and 7 kids and you work and do the things that you do, and how do you write books? Like, how do you find the time to do it? And the reality of it is I really don't have the time. I think God just gives me exponential windows of opportunity, and when he gives me an idea, I just get a pen and or pencil and paper or my phone, and I end up writing. So believe it or not, I literally wrote this book on the way to church, while we were still going to church, before the pandemic hit.
Right.
I literally wrote this book on the way to church, on my phone. And then, once I was done, I gave it to my editor. She sent it. I sent it to her. She saw it. She edited it. Because it's a children's book, it's a short book, so it didn't take her any time to do it. And then I sent it to my illustrator. So, the hardest thing for me to do, which wasn't really that hard, was to write it. By then, I just gave it to everybody else for them to do their part. The hardest part for me was waiting to see the finished work, right?
So in truth, somebody out there who wants to do what you're doing, all you're telling them is to take action.
Yes, absolutely. Find the time, take the action, find your people, and do what you need to do and get it done.
In closing, what would your advice be? 3 key points of advice for families who are parenting and who are in the midst of this global pandemic.
I would say number one, stay consistent. Number two, don't give up on your kids. And number three, trust God, trust the process. Stay consistent, don't give up on your kids. What I mean, don't give up on your kids is that sometimes when you come home from work or mentally you're not in a good headspace sometimes and the kids need help with their homework and it just may sometimes be too much for you, just calm down. Don't give up on your kids, make time for them. Push, help them to strive to excel, to do the best that they can. Set a standard, I would say that. So don't give up on your kids, be consistent, and trust the process, I would say.
Trust the process.
Trust the process.
James, we thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
And we will go forward. We will trust the process. Thank you so much. You have been a wealth of information and we are just happy to be here talking to you.
Thank you.
We love your family.
Thank you so much.
And all the experience they've given you to speak as you have today. With that, everyone, we thank you for joining us. God's got it. Parenting in the pandemic, God's got it.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Real Talk. We want to thank all of our guests today, Charlotte Avery, James Felton, and Veronica Anderson. If you haven't done so already, please make sure you subscribe to our YouTube so that you are able to catch all of our new episodes of Real Talk. Hope to see you soon.